Hello everyone, and welcome to my 20-second Pokemon challenge. We're finally back in Johto after all this time. It's been so long since we managed to beat Red with Chikorita and Cyndaquil, but don't worry, I didn't forget about this last Johto starter. Today we seek to answer, can you beat Pokemon SoulSilver with only a Totodile? Before we get too far into the video, I'd like you all to know that I'm working really hard to produce a new Pokemon challenge video every week. So if you like this content, please consider liking and subscribing, as it would really mean a lot to me and it would help the channel grow. Anyways, let's quickly cover the rules so we can begin. Rule number 1, no glitches, hacks, or cheats. I do, however, use speed up, otherwise these videos would take far longer to produce and I'd rather produce them quickly. Rule number 2, I can only use one Pokemon in battle. However, because I am not cheating, I do need to use HM Pokemon for travel purposes only. And lastly, rule number 3, no items in battle. This doesn't include held items, as I use Everstones during some runs, and so other held items are also allowed if necessary. With all of that out of the way, let's begin. Obviously, our first goal is to get our Totodile, which thankfully didn't take too long. I went for a Jolly Nature Totodile this time around since I knew that Totodile had a pretty good attack stat but struggled a bit with speed. Normally I'd get into EV training, but just like in the Emerald Solo runs, we don't have access to Pokeballs until after we beat our rival for the first time. After taking care of our quick errand, we then enter into our first rival battle against Silver. Silver only has his Chikorita, a true powerhouse, but thankfully we're able to win after trading some tackles and scratches. Now we're ready to get into EV training. We've got everything we need here on this route actually, which is very fortunate for us. As far as the EV training itself, we knock out collectively 252 of both Rattata and Pidgey for speed EVs, as well as 252 Sentret for attack EVs. With our EV training finally complete, we're ready to begin our journey through Johto. Starting off our gym challenge is Falkner, who leads with his Pidgey. We're very strong right now, so a single Ice Fang is more than enough to completely destroy Pidgey. Falkner's last Pokemon is his Pidgeotto, who meets the same sad fate as the Pidgey before it. Making our way towards our next gym, we're roped into our first Team Rocket battle against Executive Proton. Proton leads with his Zubat, who we're able to smite with Ice Fang. Following the Zubat is Proton's last Pokemon, Coughing, who we're able to crunch into oblivion with ease. After kicking Team Rocket out of town, we can challenge Bugsy, our second gym leader. Bugsy leads with his Scyther, who is yet another victim to our Icy Fangs. Bugsy's next Pokemon is his Metapod, who we slash to pieces. Bugsy's last Pokemon is his Kakuna, who we're able to annihilate with a crit slash. Leaving Azalea Town, we're stopped by Silver for our second rival battle. Silver leads with his Ghastly, who cannot survive our deadly crunch. Silver then sends out his Bayleaf, who we immediately knock out with a single Ice Fang. Silver's last Pokemon is his Zubat, who we're able to freeze in place with Ice Fang. Since our edgy rival is out of the way for now, we're able to take on another gym leader, this time being Whitney. Whitney's first Pokemon is her Clefairy, who we're able to take out easily with a slash. Whitney's last Pokemon is her dreaded Miltank, who we slash for about a third of its health, but then we're hit with Attract. We slash again on the next turn, and then Miltank uses Milk Drink. We're immobilized on the following turn and then hit with Stomp, and then the same happens on the turn after. Yet again, we're immobilized by Love, but this time Miltank uses Milk Drink, healing up to full health. We're immobilized once more, this time we're stomped once again. Finally, we're able to land another slash, and then we're hit with Stomp again. We're then able to land Crunch, but then Miltank uses Milk Drink again. We're then immobilized and Miltank uses Milk Drink again, getting itself back to full health. This time we land Crunch and lower Miltank's defense before we're hit with Stomp. We then land one last Crunch, winning the battle with 9 HP remaining after a level up. After beating Whitney, we took a break from battling and spent considerable time within the game corner, preparing for much later on in the run. We were here until we earned around 8,000 coins, which would be enough for us to buy the TMs for both Swords Dance and Double Team. Having taken care of our coin-earning quota, we're back on schedule with our Johto journey. Our next battle is against Silver, who leads with his Ghastly. Ghastly can't even hope to stand against our crit crunch and faints immediately. Silver then sends out his Bayleaf, who just like last time, faints to a single Ice Fang. Silver's next Pokemon is his dreaded Magnemite, who resists our first crunch and then hits us with Thunder Wave. On the next turn, we're hit with Thundershock and we're sadly paralyzed this turn. Magnemite then hits us with Supersonic and we hit ourselves in confusion. We're then hit with another Thundershock, but again we're paralyzed. Yet another hit from Thundershock, but this time we're out of confusion and we're able to land another Crunch to knock out Magnemite. Silver's last Pokemon is his Zubat, who outspeeds us with Wing Attack, but we tank it with 1 HP remaining before we answer with an Ice Fang to knock out the Zubat. We have a brief run-in with the legendary beasts before we challenge Morty to our next gym battle. Morty leads with his Ghastly, who we snuff out with Crunch. Morty's next Pokemon is his Gengar, who also cannot withstand the glory of our Crunch. Morty then sends out his first Haunter, who we exercise with Crunch. Morty's last Pokemon is his second Haunter, who was just as brave and just as stupid as the first. Upon arriving in Olivine, we discover that we can't battle the gym leader until after we heal Amphi. We decide to help out however we can, so we head over to Cyanwood. While we're over there though, we run into Eugene again, who wants to battle us over his devotion to Suicune. Eugene leads with his Drowsy, who we get off screen as soon as possible with Crunch. Eugene's next Pokemon is his Electrode, who tries to hit us with Thunder and thankfully misses, giving us a free turn and letting us hit Electrode with Slash for about half of its health. We're then hit with Thunder on the next turn, which almost one-shots us, but we're able to finish off Electrode with another Slash before things get worse. Eugene's last Pokemon is his Haunter, who we're able to knock out with ease thanks to our prior experiences with other Haunter. While we're at Cyanwood, I decided it would be a good time to battle Chuck so we wouldn't need to make 2 trips out here. Sorry Amphi, but you can wait a little bit. Chuck leads with his Primeape, who we're able to one-shot with a crit Slash. Chuck's next Pokemon is his Poliwrath, who we have a lot more trouble with. We hit Poliwrath with Slash for a quarter of its health, and it hits us back with a crit Surf. We land another Slash on the next turn, lowering Poliwrath enough to proc its Citrus Berry before it hits us back with Body Slam. Poliwrath then tries to use Focus Punch, but we hit it with another crit Slash to break its focus. Chuck then heals up Poliwrath and we hit it with another Slash to lower it a bit. Poliwrath again tries to use Focus Punch, but we break its focus once again with another Slash. This time we hit Slash first before we're hit with Surf, but then Chuck again heals up his Poliwrath. Ugh. We again land another Slash after Poliwrath tries Focus Punch, making the punch fail once more. We again land another Slash, this time we're hit with Body Slam, thankfully not paralyzing us. Finally, we slash Poliwrath one final time, winning the battle with 15 HP remaining after a last level up at the end. We return back to Olivine at long last and deliver the medicine to Amphi. And then we're catching the Red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage. Simply put, Jasmine with her double Magnemite nonsense is just unfair for us right now. Since we have the option to tackle Chuck, Jasmine, and Price in any order, I figured that we deal with the Mahogany stuff first before we double back later and deal with Jasmine when we're stronger. After dealing with the Red Gyarados, we infiltrate the Team Rocket base under Mahogany and end up battling against Petrel of Team Rocket. Petrel leads with his Zubat, who we're able to obliterate with Ice Fang. Petrel's next Pokemon is his Coughing, who falls to a single Crunch. Petrel's last Pokemon is his Raticate, who also cannot even hope to withstand our Crunch, fainting immediately. Petrel skedaddles, and then we see about shutting the base down, but we're stopped by Ariana before we can bring our plans to life. Thankfully, Lance joins us before Ariana and her Grunt can bully us. Ariana and her Grunt lead with Arbok and Drowsy, with Arbok lowering our attack with Intimidate. Somehow we're still able to one-shot the Arbok with Aqua Tail, but then Drowsy disables our Aqua Tail sadly. Ariana sends out her Murkrow next, but we still have Ice Fang in our arsenal, which we use to end Murkrow immediately. Dragonite then hits Drowsy with Fly, knocking it out. Ariana sends out her Gloom, and the Grunt sends out their Grimer. We're able to one-shot the Gloom with Ice Fang, and then Dragonite uses Fly against Grimer, but sadly we're hit with Mud Slap. On the next turn, we're able to finally knock out the Grimer with a single slash before Dragonite can hit it with Fly. Now that we've kicked Team Rocket out of Mahogany, we can face off against our next gym leader, Price. Price leads with his Seal, who we hit with Slash and fail to knock out, meaning that Seal can use Hail. On the next turn, Price heals up Seal, but we hit it with another Slash to drop it back down to where it was. We're then able to land one last crit Slash to knock out the Seal on the following turn. Up next is Piloswine, who we hit with Slash for a bit less than half of its health while also dodging a Mud Bomb. On the next turn, I stop being a fool and use Aqua Tail to finish off the Piloswine. Price's last Pokemon is his Dugong, who we hit with Slash for about half of its health while Dugong hits us with Aurora Beam. We then hit Dugong with another Slash, but it isn't enough to knock it out, letting Dugong use Rest to get back to full health. We then hit Dugong with a Crunch, lowering its defense while Dugong uses Sleep Talk, but the move basically failed, and so we're able to finish off Dugong on the next turn with another crunch. Alright, I've put her off enough, it's time to finally double back and deal with Jasmine. Jasmine leads with the first of her evil spawn, Magnemite. We hit it with Crunch, but sadly we don't get the defense drop and we're hit with Thunderwave. Magnemite now outspeeds us, but it misses Supersonic and we're able to knock it out with another Crunch. Jasmine then sends out her second Magnemite, who also misses Supersonic, and we're able to land Crunch once more. On the next turn, Magnemite again misses Supersonic and we're still not paralyzed, letting us finally knock out this cursed being. Jasmine's last Pokemon is her Steelix, who outspeeds us with Screech of all things before we land a crit Aqua Tail and knock out Steelix immediately. I guess Team Rocket didn't take too kindly to being steamrolled at every turn, so they've decided to take over Goldenrod in retaliation. The first Team Rocket executive we need to face is Petrol, who leads with his first of 5 Coughing. Ugh. Anyways, I'll keep this fight short. We knock out the first Coughing with Aqua Tail. Petrol then sends out his Weezing, who we also one-shot with Aqua Tail. We miss an Aqua Tail against Petrol's second Coughing, and as a result we end up poisoned. We then quickly Aqua Tail through the rest of Petrol's 4 Coughings and close out the battle before Poison knocks us out. Petrol had coughed up the location of the Radio Tower boss, so while we're trying to find him, Silver decides that this is the perfect time to bother us for attention. Silver leads with his Golbat, who we immediately put out of its misery with a crit Ice Fang. Silver then sends out his Meganium, who we're unable to one-shot with Ice Fang. However, we do cause Meganium to flinch and then take it out with a second Ice Fang on the next turn. Silver's next Pokemon is his Magnemite, much to my dismay. We use Crunch on the Magnemite for about half of its health, and we do get the defense drop, but sadly we're hit by Thunder Wave. On the next turn, Magnemite outspeeds us and tries to use Supersonic but misses, meaning that we can land a crit Crunch to knock it out. Up next is Haunter, who hits us with Shadow Ball for about a quarter of our health before we land a crit Crunch, obliterating Haunter. Silver's last Pokemon is his Sneasel, who hits us with Feint Attack before we're able to retaliate with Crunch, lowering Sneasel's defense in the process. We're then hit with another Feint Attack, but we finish Sneasel off on the next turn with a Slash. After freeing the Radio Tower boss, we head back into the Radio Tower and run into Executive Proton on our way to the top. Proton leads with his Golbat, who we're easily able to knock out with an Ice Fang. Proton's last Pokemon is his Weezing, who we hit with Slash before we're hit with Smokescreen. We then land another Slash, still unable to knock out the Weezing, and we end up getting hit with Sludge. Finally, one more Slash is able to finish the job. Once again, we find ourselves battling Ariana, who is giving me some rather creepy vibes now that we're alone. Ariana leads with her Arbok, who lowers our attack with Intimidate. We're almost able to one-shot with Aqua Tail, but not quite, meaning that we're hit with Crunch. On the next turn, we finish off Arbok with Slash. Ariana then sends out her Vileplume, who tanks our Ice Fang and then hits us with Sleep Powder. We spend the next turn asleep while Vileplume hits us with Mega Drain for not as much damage as I thought, and then we wake up to finish off Vileplume with another Ice Fang. Ariana's last Pokemon is her Murkrow, who we're very easily able to completely annihilate with Ice Fang. Finally, we've reached the last Team Rocket executive at the top of the Radio Tower. Archer leads with his Houndour, who we try to hit with Aqua Tail but miss, meaning that we're hit with Bite. On the next turn, we land our Aqua Tail and one-shot the Houndour. Archer's next Pokemon is his Houndoom, who also falls to a single Aqua Tail. Archer's last Pokemon is his Coughing, who I thought we could one-shot with Crunch. Alas, I was wrong, meaning that we're hit with Sludge and poisoned. My hubris caused this. We then take things a bit more seriously with a Crunch and finish off the Coughing. Now that Team Rocket has been beaten out of Goldenrod, it's time to refocus on the Gym Challenge. We needed to grind a bit for Claire, which I found a bit surprising, but oh well. Claire leads with her Gyarados, who lowers our attack with Intimidate. We hit Gyarados with Crunch while Gyarados hits us back with Dragon Rage, and then on the next turn we land another Crunch to knock out the Gyarados. Up next is Claire's first Dragonair, who falls to our Ice Fang without any fuss. Claire's next Pokemon is her second Dragonair, who falls exactly like the first. Claire's last Pokemon is her Kingdra, who we hit with Crunch, hoping for a defense drop, which we thankfully get. Kingdra then hits us back with Smokescreen, but we're still able to land another Crunch on the next turn, getting another defense drop. Kingdra then blasts us with Hyper Beam for about a quarter of our health, and then eats a berry, which worked in our favor since Claire didn't heal up, and we were able to finish it off on the next turn. After finally conquering the Gym Challenge, we're summoned to the Kimono Girls Theater, where we're subject to a gauntlet of 5 battles between them all. This gauntlet wasn't very difficult, just a series of one-shotting most of the evolutions. Having completed the Kimono Girl gauntlet, we find ourselves following them to the Whirl Islands where they perform a dance, summoning Lugia. Lugia is pretty easy to catch since we got the Master Ball right before heading over here, no big deal. Finally, we're able to make our way through Victory Road towards the culmination of our Johto Gym challenge, but Silver stops us just before we reach the light at the end of the tunnel. Silver leads with his Sneasel, who we slash to pieces immediately. Up next is Meganium, who we hit with Ice Fang for a one-shot. Silver then sends out his Magneton, my arch-nemesis. We hit Magneton with a Crunch, failing to get the defense drop before we're hit with Thunder Wave. Magneton then misses Supersonic and we're able to land another Crunch. On the next turn, Magneton uses Spark and we're paralyzed. However, on the next turn, Magneton again misses Supersonic and we're able to bring it down with another Crunch. Silver then sends out his Haunter, who used Mean Look against us instead of Curse for some reason, meaning that we're able to knock it out with a Crunch. Silver's next Pokemon is his Kadabra, who puts up Reflect, but that can't stop us from one-shotting this poor Pokemon. Silver's last Pokemon is his Golbat, who hits us with Air Cutter before we hit it back with Ice Fang, somehow failing to one-shot. We're then hit with Confuse Ray, but fortunately we're still able to land another Ice Fang, taking down Silver once again. At long last, we're finally facing off against the Elite Four, starting off with Will. Will leads with his first Xatu, who we immediately crunch for a one-shot. Up next is Jinx, who also can't hope to resist our devastating Crunch. Following Jinx is Executor, who we're thankfully able to one-shot with Crunch as well. Will's next Pokemon is his Slowbro, who we hit with Crunch but fail to knock out, while Slowbro uses Amnesia. On the next turn, Will heals up Slowbro and we hit Slash. We then use Crunch, but we still don't knock out, though we do get a defense drop this time. However, Slowbro uses Amnesia again, raising its stats once more. One more Slash is able to finish the job though. Will's last Pokemon is his second Xatu, who falls just like the first. Moving on through the Elite Four, our next battle is against Koga. Koga leads with his Ariados, who tanks our Ice Fang and hits us back with Poison Jab. Koga then heals up Ariados and we hit it with Slash for roughly the same damage. We're then able to finish off Ariados with another Slash. Koga's next Pokemon is his Forretress, who I used Crunch against, hoping for a defense drop that we didn't get before we're hit with a Crit Swift. We then used Crunch again and still didn't get a defense drop, getting hit by Swift again. I then went for an Aqua Tail but got walled by Protect. That didn't save Forretress from our next Aqua Tail though, which knocked it out. Koga then sends out his Muck, who we're able to one-shot with a Crit Crunch. Up next is Crobat, who we're able to outspeed thankfully, which also means that our Ice Fang completely annihilates Crobat. Koga's last Pokemon is his Venomoth, who also falls to our Crit Ice Fang. Going into the third of the Elite Four, I was a bit nervous about Bruno. Bruno leads with his Hitmontop, but we're able to one-shot with Aqua Tail. Following Hitmontop is Hitmonchan, who we try to hit with Aqua Tail but miss, meaning that we're hit with Thunder Punch for minimal damage. On the next turn, we one-shot with Aqua Tail and call it an even trade. Bruno then sends out his Hitmonlee, who also falls to a single Aqua Tail. Bruno's next Pokemon is his ace, Machamp, who we're still somehow able to one-shot with Aqua Tail, thankfully. Bruno's last Pokemon is his Onix, who is very easy to take down with a single Aqua Tail. Now at the last of the Elite Four, Karen is all that stands between us and the champion. Karen leads with her Umbreon, who we hit with Slash for about half of its health, while Umbreon uses Double Team. We then go for an Aqua Tail and miss, meaning that we're hit with Feint Attack. Fortunately, we land our next Aqua Tail and knock out the Umbreon. Karen's next Pokemon is her Vileplume, who we're surprisingly able to one-shot with Ice Fang. Following Vileplume is Gengar, who we outspeed with a Crunch, knocking it out easily. Karen's next Pokemon is her Houndoom, but sadly I was out of Aqua Tails and forced into using Crunch. Houndoom uses Nasty Plot, and then we hit another Crunch while Houndoom eats its Citrus Berry. We're then hit with a really strong Dark Pulse, but thankfully we're able to take Houndoom out with a Slash on the next turn. Karen's last Pokemon is her Murkrow, who we easily knock out with an Ice Fang. Finally, we're face to face with Lance, the last wall between us and our first showing of the credits. Lance leads with his Gyarados, who lowers our attack with Intimidate. We hit Gyarados with Crunch, hoping for a defense drop, but we get a crit instead. We're then hit with Dragon Pulse before Lance heals up, but this time our Crunch does far less. We then trade Dragon Pulse and Crunch again, and then on the next turn we finally get our defense drop before Gyarados hits us with Flail. At last, we're able to land one last crunch to knock Gyarados out. Lance's next Pokemon is his first Dragonite, who we're able to knock out with a single Ice Fang. Lance's second Dragonite is up next, who also falls to Ice Fang. Lance then sends out his Aerodactyl, who we miss our Aqua Tail against, meaning that we're hit with Thunder Fang, dropping us all the way down to 7 HP. Thankfully, we hit our next Aqua Tail and knock out Aerodactyl before leveling up to gain 2 HP back. Lance's last Dragonite is up next, who is about as much of a threat as the first two. Lance's last Pokemon is his Charizard, and thankfully we don't miss our Aqua Tail, taking down Charizard with a single hit and earning the title of champion. While I do consider winning against Lance to be a win in the eyes of the challenge, per a few polls I ran here on the channel and in the Discord a while back, we're still not done. Oh no. Even though we technically have a final time here of 24 hours and 4 minutes, we've still got a few really tough battles left before I'm satisfied with how far we can push Totodile. I will not have Totodile be outdone by Chikorita and Cyndaquil, it just will not be. We take a trip to Kanto and set about unlocking all of the Kanto cities before challenging the gym leaders. Our first objective is to catch the Snorlax since we need the leftovers for later. Our next objective is to battle Silver. Yes, Silver is in Kanto, but if you don't go to Mount Moon, you'll miss him. Anyways, Silver leads with his Sneasel, who we slash to pieces immediately. Silver then sends out his Meganium, which we're thankfully able to completely annihilate with Ice Fang. Silver then sends out his Magneton, who we're able to hit with Crunch, but sadly we're hit with Thunder Wave. On the next turn, Magneton outspeeds us with Discharge, but we're able to land another Crunch to knock it out. Up next is Alakazam, who sets up Reflect, but that can't protect it from our devastating crit Crunch. Silver then sends out his Gengar, who hits us with a Shadow Ball before we're able to one-shot with Crunch. Silver's last Pokemon is his Golbat, who outspeeds us with Air Cutter before we're able to retaliate with Ice Fang. Golbat then misses Air Cutter, but sadly we're paralyzed and unable to finish off Golbat. Golbat then hits us with Air Cutter again, but finally we're able to knock it out with another Ice Fang. Now that we've gotten all of our Kanto errands out of the way, we're ready to start our Kanto Gym Challenge. We're starting with Brock and moving through the gyms in order. Brock leads with his Graveler, who we immediately knock out with an Ice Fang. Up next is Kabutops, who despite being half water type, cannot resist our Aqua Tail and faints immediately. Following Kabutops is Onix, who is yet another victim of our Ice Fang. Brock then sends out his Rhyhorn, who yet again is bodied by our crit Ice Fang. Brock's last Pokemon is his Omastar, Lord Helix himself, who resists our Aqua Tail and strikes us back with Ancient Power. On the following turn, Brock heals Lord Helix, but we hit Aqua Tail again, lowering Omastar back down to where it was. Brock again heals up Omastar, but this time we went for Crunch, only doing about half of its health. On the next turn, our Crunch fails to knock out and Omastar uses Ancient Power again, this time getting a stat boost. Brock again heals up Lord Helix and we again go for Crunch. On the next turn, we use Aqua Tail again, still failing to knock out, while Omastar continues to barrage us with Ancient Power. Finally, we're able to land one last Crunch to take down Lord Helix. Misty is our next opponent, but maybe should go easy on us since we have a Water-type Pokemon this time around. Misty leads with her Golduck, who we chomp with Crunch, failing to knock out before Golduck strikes us back with Psychic. Misty then heals up Golduck and then we Crunch again, getting a defense drop this time. On the next turn, another Crunch takes down the Golduck. Misty's next Pokemon is her Quagsire, who we hit with Ice Fang for about half of its health before Quagsire uses Amnesia. On the next turn, we slash Quagsire and bring it down. Misty then sends out her Lapras, who we hit with Crunch for huge damage, getting a defense drop as well. Sadly, Lapras then uses Sing and we spend 4 turns asleep, getting hit with 4 body slams before we finally wake up and finish off Lapras with another Crunch. Misty's last Pokemon is her Starmie, who we're very easily able to one-shot with a single Crunch. Moving on from Misty, we're entering into an electrified battle against Surge. Surge leads with his Raichu, who we immediately crit slash for a one-shot, but sadly Static paralyzes us. Up next is Surge's first Electrode, who uses Double Team while we're paralyzed. Electrode then uses Light Screen and we're able to knock it out with Slash. Surge's second Electrode is sent out next, who also starts with Double Team, but this time we're able to knock it out on the first turn with Slash. Surge then sends out his Electabuzz, who outspeeds us with Shockwave before we're able to retaliate with Slash for an instant knockout. Surge's last Pokemon is his Magneton, who uses Double Team, but we're still able to hit Crunch anyways, even getting a defense drop. Magneton then uses Shockwave, and sadly we miss our Crunch. We're then hit with another Shockwave, but this time we land our Crunch, finally taking down Surge. Erica is our next opponent, the 4th gym leader in our Kanto Gym Challenge. Erica leads with her Jumpluff, who goes down to Ice Fang easily. Following Jumpluff is Tangela, who also falls to our Ice Fang. Erica then sends out Blossom, who despite having amazing dance moves, cannot dodge our Icy Jaws. Erica's last Pokemon is her Victory Bell, who was the last foe to meet its end to our Ice Fang. After breaking our nose several times by navigating through Janine's gym full of invisible walls, we're finally ready for our 5th gym battle. Janine leads with her Crobat, who we outspeed with Ice Fang, bringing down the bat easily. Janine's next Pokemon is her Weezing, who we get lucky with, knocking it out with a Crit Slash. Janine then sends out her Venomoth, who just like with Crobat, also falls to our Ice Fang. Janine's next Pokemon is her first Ariados, who actually tanks our Ice Fang before using Scary Face against us. Janine then heals her Ariados, but it doesn't matter since we were able to one-shot it anyways. Janine's last Pokemon is her second Ariados, who fortunately doesn't tank our first Ice Fang, fainting immediately. Sabrina is our next opponent, and I still have no idea why she has so few Pokemon. Sabrina leads with her Espeon, who is a very easy one-shot with Crunch. Sabrina then sends out her Alakazam, which is just as fragile as the Espeon. Sabrina's last Pokemon is her Mr. Mime, who sadly can't mime a muzzle for our Crunch. Blaine is the last of the regular gym leaders in Kanto, but for some reason he also has a lack of Pokemon. Blaine leads with his Magcargo, who we completely washed with Aqua Tail. Up next is Magmar, who is also easily dealt with via Aqua Tail. Blaine's last Pokemon is his Rapidash, who cannot muster the strength to resist our Aqua Tail either. We've made it to what is usually one of the hardest fights in the game, Gym Leader Blue. Usually, this fight takes many attempts, but that wasn't the case this time. Blue leads with his Exeggutor, who we immediately gnaw down with a Crit Crunch. Up next is Rhydon, who we bring down with a singular Aqua Tail. Blue's next Pokemon is his Machamp, who also falls to a single Aqua Tail. Blue then sends out his Arcanine, who lowers our attack with Intimidate. Despite our attack being lowered, Aqua Tail is still more than enough to bring down this doggo. Blue then sends out his Pidgeot, who we're able to outspeed with Ice Fang, sadly not one-shotting. It doesn't matter though, since we get a freeze and we're able to follow up with another Ice Fang on the next turn to knock out Pidgeot. Blue's last Pokemon is his Gyarados, who also lowers our attack with Intimidate. We outspeed with Crunch while Gyarados uses Dragon Dance. The same thing happens on the next turn, and the turn after that, Blue heals Gyarados before we can finish it off with another Crunch. We then land another Crunch, but Gyarados uses Return this time for about a third of our health. Thankfully, we're able to land one last Crunch to take down the Gyarados. Well, we've made it to the end. Red is our last opponent, and let me tell you, this was not easy. Red took many attempts. Red leads with his Pikachu, who we use Double Team against before Pikachu misses Thunderbolt. On the next turn, we go for an Ice Fang, hoping for a flinch or freeze, and thankfully we get a freeze, but sadly that freeze wears off instantly when Pikachu thankfully misses Thunderbolt. Red then heals up Pikachu, meaning that we can use Double Team for free. We then use Double Team once more while Pikachu misses yet another Thunderbolt. On the next turn, we use Crunch, getting a defense drop while Pikachu again misses Thunderbolt. Finally, we're able to land an Ice Fang, finishing off Pikachu. Red's next Pokemon is Venusaur, who we use Swords Dance against while Venusaur misses Sleep Powder. We then use Crunch, taking about half of Venusaur's health while Venusaur misses Giga Drain. We then miss Ice Fang, but it doesn't matter since Venusaur also misses Giga Drain again. On the next turn, we land another crit and knock out the Venusaur. Red then sends out his Blastoise, but we're thankfully able to knock it out with a Crit Crunch. Following Blastoise is Snorlax, but we get seriously lucky with another Crit Crunch, one-shotting this big boy. Red's next Pokemon is his Lapras, who we hit with Crunch for about half of its health before it hits us back with Psychic. On the next turn, we're able to land another Crunch to take it down. Red's last Pokemon is his Charizard, who we also hit with Crunch, but we're hit with a devastating Air Slash since we didn't one-shot. Thankfully, we're still able to bring an end to this accursed dragon as well as the battle itself on the next turn with one final Crunch. I am so proud of this run, not only because Totodile has proven that yes, you can definitely beat all of SoulSilver with only a single Totodile, but also because we've now proven that every single Johto starter is capable of beating Red, you just need to be well prepared. Red took a very long time to beat and we had to use a very specific move pool, but nevertheless I'm still super proud of how this run went. The final time for this run was 28 hours and 4 minutes, which is the second fastest actually. Chikorita is currently the fastest Johto starter, with Cyndaquil being the slowest. However, I think Totodile would have been the fastest had I not wasted a bit of time trying out a new time-saving method involving A-Palms during this run. Oh well. Before we end things off here, I wanted to let you all know that I stream this run over on Twitch, which I plan on doing weekly. Also, if you like this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe as it would help me out a lot. I've got new Pokemon challenges coming out weekly, so if you like this video, there are plenty more to come. If you'd like, feel free to leave a comment to let me know how you felt about the video, since I love seeing what you guys think about my content. If you're interested in hanging out, feel free to follow the link below to either my Twitch, my Discord, or my Twitter, if Twitter is still around when you're watching this video. This has been Shro, and thank you for watching.